Theme song. Theme song. All right. Hello, it's Soul with another video. It's about Shadowlands. It's about Covenant choice. Well, it was going to be a more or less direct response to Bellular's very recent video on issues in the Shadowlands, including Covenant choice, but that didn't work out. It actually turned into what was more like a not so coherent mass of text, more like a rant. I'm just really bad at reaction videos, okay? But I would be very grateful if you were to give this a listen. Today we're gonna beat the horse that is dead and it doesn't even know it yet. The whole debate over choosing covenants and the consequences of these choices. We've heard many of the arguments, we've made some of our own, and I myself have discussed it numerous times. And personally, I'm good. I'm fine with the intended design, adding a lot of friction between changing out covenants and such, choosing a team, so to speak, because I'd like to think that I understand what Blizzard's trying to do, which I'm gonna try and get into a little bit later. But I also totally get why many players want to be able to swap these powers out with little to no friction. In so few words, actually it's a lot of words, it's so they don't have to feel punished by their choices. They want to demonstrate skill and proficiency by adapting their characters to any and every given situation, to be optimal. So they know that it's within their agency to be what they need or their party or their raid team needs. It's so that player 1 and player 2 can compare themselves side by side, as in the same class and spec and gear and talent and so on, and show off who is better skilled. And this scenario can still pretty much happen. Ian Azakostas left the door open for that, and while it's great that he said that to reassure players, it's biting them in the ass too, because until that happens, some fans are never gonna shut up about it. Like I said just earlier though, I'm fine with being locked into this choice because it was easy for me, like Kyrians are simply the best, right? But I also support the idea of lifting the restrictions too, because it doesn't affect me, given that I'm sticking to my winged sisters and brothers anyway. So if that's the case, I should firmly support the whole ripping the ripcord thing, shouldn't I? It's no big deal to me one way or the other, Blizzard, so you might as well do it. Conversation over, smash the like button, subscribe, and, see you later. It'll make those people happy, or at least they'll move on to the next thing to campaign over, and spoiler alert, it's Conduit swapping, which I'm also going to touch on later. The thing is though, I want this current design to go live too. Not because I'm some sick bastard who loves watching the chaos, or am I? But I also wonder, with this current conversation, what direction do some of these players want the World of Warcraft to go down? It's slightly horrifying thanks to a certain image that's been going around. It's a very clever compromise of identity and choice, because we can choose the covenant that we want, and we have a talent row-like selection of covenant abilities that can be freely swapped. It's actually a very workable idea, and I can't argue that this could have been the original approach. People would have been perfectly happy, and then we would turn our attention to, well, conduit swapping. But it's also horrifying because this is like the abdication of game design. In this case, your identity is just cosmetic. It's just colors and particle effects that define you. In a perfect delivery of Shadowlands, a given covenant choice would be 100% optimal in, several situations, but 90 to 99% optimal in every other situation. I think in a nutshell, that's what Blizzard is shooting for, and best of luck to them on that one, because between the 50 or so abilities, there's like throughput and damage enhancements that will scale as the expansion rolls along, so that's gonna be like, kill me. It's understandable if there is dwindling faith in the Blizzard team to deliver on balance, especially just a few months before launch. But this is being magnified with tweets and memes that paint a bleak picture, with a daily news cycle from the likes of fan sites and streams, and I'm a part of this too, this whole industry that keeps Shadowlands under the microscope, adding more and more pressure. If I were to take a snapshot now, I would simply say no. That whole 10% gulf between the different Covenant abilities, from their throughput to utility, it's just not there yet. but loosening restrictions on Covenant abilities isn't going to make Blizzard stop working on balancing them out anyway. What I think is more important, maybe it's the old young man in me, but I gotta wonder, is this the direction that MMORPGs are going, or at least the World of Warcraft? Because if you listen to that whole Bellular video, you apparently need to use Blood Mallet. You should give raid bots money so you can sim your character, because apparently learning to understand WoW systems down to its formula is both required and too difficult to do without outside help. And everyone's doing it. And if you're not, clearly you don't care about the game as much as others do. So maybe I embellished that, but for me that was the takeaway. I think what Blizzard's trying to protect isn't just the idea of meaningful choice and identity in part of players, but the identity of the world of Warcraft itself, and it's mostly their fault. It's thanks to the hole that it and the community dug for itself by making this whole sense of competition the face of WoW. The Arena World Championships and the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, built by Blizzard. The race to World First, and logs, and sims, and IO score, supported by Blizzard. Today's WoW, I would argue, from the culture to the game itself, is less about mystery and discovery and roleplay, and it's more about balance, optimization, and ranking. So it's of no surprise that while Covenant choices might be great in a single-player offline game, many critics have loathed this idea from the very beginning, because they would say it's an MMO, and they've got to factor in the competitive side of players. I can't fully agree with that though, because the way I see it, those critics see WoW purely through that competitive lens to the abandonment of any other. Now, I'm not a fan of Final Fantasy XIV gameplay, but I envy the fact that their development team does not make competition a high-profile part of the game. I mean, it's there, but it's not front and center. I think that's one of the biggest differences between that and the World of Warcraft. Bellular and many others have said that by lifting the Covenant restrictions and otherwise getting rid of choices, that nothing bad is lost. I kind of said it myself just earlier too, but I also have to disagree. But it just depends on how much you care about what is lost. Removing restrictions means my choosing the Kyrian as my Covenant is no different from the transmog that I choose or the title over my head. My choice would mean nothing more than dungeon buffs. I'd no longer be defined by my unique ability because it's not unique. Every paladin has it now. And it's assumed that I must always have the right one for the right situation. And it goes beyond Covenants. In Shadowlands, Frost Death Knights can either dual wield or go two-handed. Fury Warriors can go Titan Grip or Single-Minded Fury. But the cold reality is that the top players are going to figure out the stance that sims the best, and that pressure is going to lead to people feeling discriminated against because they made the so-called wrong choice. It makes you wonder if choices like that can still be made at all. Critics often call Blizzard the fun police when a game-breaking exploit or a bug is fixed, but many players will also trash on one another because someone made the wrong choice. Pugs are going to discriminate against people who happen to be in the wrong Covenant in Mythic Plus or raids or whatever. But we do that now in Battle for Azeroth, and we did that way back when the pre-made group tool became a thing back in Warlords of Draenor. So maybe it's not just the way game systems like Covenants are set up, maybe it's also the social systems like the group tool that needs a revamp. It's clear to me that there is a culture clash within the World of Warcraft, and Shadowlands is putting this to a head. The polish of competition versus the rougher edges of roleplay. I just want to log on and have some fun with friends and guildmates. I want to crush bad guys and celebrate the awesomeness that I know is my character. There are problems, obviously. I know I said that I would talk about conduit swapping problems, you know, the whole once-a-week cooldown, which I think is totally ridiculous. Bellular himself mentioned a 24-hour cooldown, but really, it doesn't matter if it was a week, a day, or an hour. Waiting just sucks. So instead, why not give these resets 5 or so charges that can build up over however much time that you, Blizzard people, think is reasonable? That's pretty much it. That pretty much takes care of every situation from trying out new conduits to fat fingering. And as for the rest, well, those players can just make plans around it. That's the end of that, and we can start wrapping this up. Pulling the ripcord is really no sweat off of my back. Like Bellular said, it's the safe and smart idea. The angry players would be sated, and very little short-term value, very little would be lost. But the question is, what does that do to the long-term identity of the World of Warcraft? Does this mark a shift in tone, where Blizzard just gives up on the idea of roleplay in favor of a dumbed-down MOBA esports that critics once derided WoW for, and maybe still do? Or was that lost long ago, and this attempt at bringing it back is just futile? Leave your thoughts. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.